Good evening. Tonight's shiur, as usual, Lili Nishma Ravi Mori Dov Ber Meir Ben Ruven Halevi Imi Marati Rachel Bar Harav Michael. And tonight we will be speaking about the parsha of Shmini, which includes a number of different topics, which begins with focus on Yom HaShmini, which is the eighth day of the Miluim, the day on which the Kohanim complete their initiation process and start to serve as Kohanim instead of Moshe being the one who is serving as officiating as the Kohen. And in the middle of all of this, we have the story with Nadav and Avihu, who are consumed when they offer an offering that they are not supposed to offer. And immediately following that, Aaron is told that the Kohanim are not to drink when they come to perform the avodah. And after that, we have some of the aftermath of the day, and finally the laws of which animals are kosher and some laws of which animals cause a person to become tamei by contact with them. But we're going to focus on the story of Aaron and his sons, and we're going to basically this is just basically to give background for the entire prohibition of Kohanim regarding wine, which is what I really want to focus on tonight, and the halachot that deal with that. So I just wanted to start with the beginning, just giving a brief overview of the story of Shmini, Israel. After we read last week about the 7 days that the Kohanim are preparing to become Kohanim, finally on the 8th day, they enter in and become Kohanim. They become this for the first time that they are actually doing the avodah, as we spoke about last week, through the initiation process. They are mostly passive. Moshe is the one doing most of the active work of bringing the korbanot. The only thing that Aaron and his sons did that was active during the Shivat Yimei HaMiluim was that they put their hands on the korbanot as the person bringing the korban was being brought on their behalf, and they were the ones, obviously, because the korban was brought on their behalf, they were the ones who got to eat a portion of the korbanot. Now we switch gears, and now we're in the 8th day. This is the day that now the Kohanim are the ones who begin to do the work in the Beit HaMikdash, and Moshe has now stepped aside into his role as Moshe Rabbeinu. He's no longer doing anything except giving instruction. Here's what you're supposed to be doing. And if we see, so on the 8th day, what immediately happens is Moshe calls Aaron and his sons, and he calls the elders, and he tells Aaron, here's what you have to bring. Tell B'nai Yisrael they have to bring the following korbanot. And we basically go through all of the procedure of the korbanot. Aaron brings the korbanot as he's supposed to. B'nai Yisrael is waiting for some sign to see that Hashem has accepted all of this. And finally, after Aaron gives the Birchat Kohanim, and Moshe and Aaron enter the Olam Moed, and they come out and give the people a greeting. Then suddenly, Vayera Kvod Hashem El Kol Ha'am, Hashem's presence is clearly visible to everybody. And then it says, a fire comes forth from Hashem and consumes the korbanot that were placed on the Mizbeach as they were supposed to be, showing that Hashem has accepted everything that has been done. And it's everybody saw, they rejoiced, and they bowed down to Hashem and was very happy. So the reaches almost, we can feel the whole work of the Mishkan, the whole construction process, the whole collection process has now reached its climax with Hashem sending this fire down from heaven to show that he has accepted all of this work. He has accepted Bnei Yisrael, and he has accepted their tshuva for the Chet HaEgel, and he is willing to once again have a relationship with Am Yisrael, a direct relationship. So that's where we are. And then in the middle of all this, suddenly Bnei Aaron, two of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, decide that they are going to take the next step, bring the next korban, even though up until this point, you go through which is what is Perek Tet, up until this point, Aaron is the primary doing. His sons are clearly helping him out. It says that they are the ones who are collecting the dam. They are bringing it to him. They are not doing any avodah on their own, other than what we call the auxiliary avodot, which also have to be done by Kohanim. but they are not the ones bringing the animal on the mizbeach, bringing the dam on the mizbeach. Aaron is doing all of that, but they are helping. Now suddenly Aaron and Nadav and Avihu take each pan and they put fire in it and they put Torah on it and they bring before Hashem an Eish Zara Shelo Tzivotam they have not been commanded to. And interestingly enough, very same phraseology that we just had before in terms of the acceptance of the Karbanot. It said Vatetze Eish Milifnei Hashem. Here also is Vatetze Eish Milifnei Hashem. But what happens this time, instead of the Eish consuming a Karban, it consumes them. Vayamutu Lifnei Hashem, and because their souls have been taken from them, they die. Moshe gives Aaron some instructions about mourning, about what types of mourning he is not allowed to do, and it specifically says later on why, because they are not allowed to keep. They are not allowed to keep any. Both Aaron and his two remaining sons are not allowed to keep any of the rites of mourning, because you are not allowed to leave the Ol Moed ki shemen mishchad Hashem aleichem. Even though ordinarily, an ordinary Kohen for the 7 relatives, including one of which is a brother, would be allowed to go through the mourning rituals and has obligation to, in this case, because even the non-Kohen Gadol of Aaron, of all of his sons, have been anointed, they are the equivalent as far as mourning is concerned to a Kohen Gadol, and therefore they have no mourning rights. By Yasuki Dvar Moshe, and Aaron and his remaining sons hear what Moshe has to say, and they say, okay, that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. And then we come to this very interesting, very short parsha of 4 psukim. Adar Hashem el Aharon Leimu. Unique pasuk in the Torah. We have psukim where it says Adar Hashem el Moshe v'el Aharon Leimu. We have numerous psukim where it says Adar Hashem el Moshe Leimu. This is the only time in the Torah it says Adar Hashem el Aharon Leimu. Exactly those 5 words. The only time in the entire Torah. Rashi will tell us. We'll see Rashi later on his interpretation of why Hashem speaks to Aaron. But let's first see what he says to Aaron. He tells him the following: Yayin v'shechar al teisht. Yayin, literally translated, means wine, and shechar, any alcoholic beverage. Al teisht, shouldn't drink. Atol v'nech v'tach, you and your sons together with you. When you collectively come into Ol Moed, and velo tamutu, and by not drinking wine, you will not die. It is a statute for eternity for all of your generations. Ula havdil, and to separate beina kodesh uveina chol, between the holy and the ordinary, uveina tamei uveina tahor, those that which is impure and that which is pure. Ula horot et Bnei Yisrael, and to teach Bnei Yisrael eight kol chukim, all of the statutes asher diber Hashem aleim biyad Moshe, that Hashem spoke to them in the hands of Moshe. What is all of this talking about? We understand the first pasuk. It seems very straightforward. Can't drink wine when you come into Ol Moed. Okay, very straightforward. You got to have your wits about you. You can't be drunk when you come in to serve Hashem. Seems pretty straightforward. What are the other 2 psukim? We'll have deal bein hakodesh bein hachol, bein hatamei bein hatahor coming, and we'll have Bnei Yisrael coming to teach us. We're going to go to the parshanim to see what they have to say about this. So, of course, we will start as usual with Rashi. Now, Rashi says, first and foremost, very interestingly enough, if I read the pasuk literally, it says yayin, wine, shechar, which typically is translated as alcoholic beverage. Shechar, I think I don't know what the exact translation is. Booze, alcohol, whatever you want to call it. But it's something that is intoxicating. So Rashi says no. Rashi says only wine is prohibited. What type of wine and what drinking of wine? Yayin derech shichruto. So when it says vishechar, it means vishechar as a verb, not as a noun. Not the noun other intoxicating beverages. It means wine that causes, in a way that causes one to become intoxicated. Gemara has a whole discussion about what that means, but we'll get to that as we go to some of the other parshanim. But that's what Rashi says. It's not shechar. A Kohen is not prohibited from drinking shechar on duty. He's prohibited from drinking wine on duty, or when he's about to go on duty. Now, it literally says when you come into Ol Moed. But if we think about the layout of the Mishkan, Ol Moed is that area which had in the Mishkan had the krushim around it. It's called Ohel Moed, the meeting place. So it's the where the Aron, the Mizbeach, the menorah, the Shulchan, and the Mizbeach HaKtoret is. The other Mizbeach HaNechoshet, which all the Karbanot were brought on, is outside of Ohel Moed. So Rashi says, wait a minute. You're telling me based on the pasuk, if I read the pasuk literally, tells me the only time a Kohen can't have a drink is when he has to enter into either to bring the ketoret, to light the menorah, to switch the bread on the shulchan, or it's Yom Kippur and he's going into the Kodesh Kodashim, in which case doesn't have to tell me that he can't drink wine on Yom Kippur because he can't eat or drink anything. Doesn't need that, right? So Rashi says, no. Even though literally it seems to mean only when you're going into Ohel Moed, he says that's not what it means. It means a larger area than that. This seems to imply, as Rashi says, only when you're entering into the actual inner court of the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan. How do I know that a Kohen who is coming to either sprinkle blood or put sacrificial parts on the Mizbeach how do I know that he's also not supposed to be drunk? Nemar kan biat Ohel Moed. Concerning this pasuk, it says when you enter to go into Ohel Moed. The Nemar b'kiddush yadayim v'raglayim biat Ohel Moed. We have a very similar phraseology Ohel Moed concerning the shiur. When it tells us that Moshe is to place this shiur, the basin, outside of which is placed between the Mizbeach and the Ohel Moed. What is the purpose of the shiur? The shiur has water for the Kohanim to wash their hands and feet before they do any avodah. First thing the Kohen does when he gets to Beit HaMikdash in the morning, after he changes into his Kohanic garments, because he doesn't generally wear them home, he generally wears his civilian clothes to go home. He comes to Beit HaMikdash, he goes to his little cubbyhole, changes his clothing. That's the first thing he usually does. The second thing he does is he has to wash his hands and feet. And then he has to actually first go to the mikvah, whatever, all these other things. But the first avodah that he does is kiddush yadayim. Now, but concerning that, the pasuk also says Boachem el Ohel Moed. But we know that it applies not only to Ohel Moed, it also applies to coming to the Mizbeach. Mala halan asa gishat Mizbeach kaviat Ohel Moed, because there the pasuk specifically says Boachem el Ohel Moed o b'karvatam el hamizbeach. Or when they come to the Mizbeach to do any work, avodah, at the Mizbeach, is explicitly said by the washing of the hands and feet. So they have to wash their hands and feet, not only before they enter Ohel Moed, but before they come to Mizbeach. So just like over there, the washing, it says, Boachem el Ohel Moed, and it also includes working on them by the Mizbeach, Afkan or Sagishat Mizbeach Kaviat Ohel Moed. Same thing concerning being drunk, whether you're coming to bring a korban on the Mizbeach, whether you're coming to sprinkle dam on the Mizbeach, you also cannot have had anything to drink. So the same halakha would apply, but again, we learn it out from the law of Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, and they had the fact that they had to wash their hands. That's all Rashi has to say on this chapter. Ramban starts, of course, by quoting Rashi. He says, Der yain derech shechruto. Rashi tells us that yayin shechar doesn't mean shechar, it means yayin in a way that causes you to become intoxicated. Lashon Rashi. Uperusho, but Rashi doesn't explain what that means. So if you've never learned the Gemara, you don't have a clue what Rashi is talking about when he says yayin derech shechruto. What does that mean? How do I drink wine how can I drink wine and not get intoxicated? What's the way I drink so I don't get drunk? And the answer is if I don't drink a full revi'it in one shot, that usually is enough to keep me from getting drunk. In other words, if you spread out your drinking of wine, you won't get drunk as quickly. Obviously, that makes sense. Oh, mayim, or if he had a revi'it, again, the Gemara discusses somebody who drinks exactly a revi'it of wine. And it says if that wine was somehow watered down a little bit, then it can't get you drunk yet. By the way, all of this is only if you're drinking exactly a revi'it of wine. If you're drinking a whole bottle of wine, it has a whole different rule. V'dato shel harav, according to Rashi, Rashi's opinion is who's haro ela al hayayin lo al shar mashkirin, that the whole prohibition for kohanim is not any other beverage except wine. Period. End of discussion. There is no prohibition about anything else. However, however, from Nazir we learn out that also Sheikhar is also permitted, but not from this pasuk. And this is I agree with what Rashi says. Ramban says. However, Rambam says the following: Al shar mashkirin bi'azhara, the shechar keeps shutav. He does not translate this verse the way Rashi does, that shechar means something that will, in a way that you'll drink wine in a way that will cause you to be intoxicated. He says it refers to any other intoxicating beverage. However, Rambam makes a differentiation between wine and all other beverages. Wine is the lo tamuta. If you go in drunk from having had too much wine, you are setting yourself up for death by the hands of heaven. Whereas anything else, you've only transgressed the negative prohibition. It's not as severe a prohibition if you get drunk on something else, according to Rambam. It's an azhara, it's a negative commandment, but it's not does not carry the death from Hashem penalty. Now, the reason Ramban says, why is this suddenly put here? This is not the place this belongs. This is here, we're reading through the events that happened on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan. After this 4 psukim interruption, we're going to continue with what happened afterwards. Why is this parsha here? It doesn't belong here. It should be with all the other laws of the Kohanim in Parshat Emor. Parshat Emor tells us Kohanim can't do this. When they come to Beit Mikdash, they have to do this. That's where this belongs, either there, or it begins up front with the laws of washing your hands, where the Kohanim have to wash, because it applies to any time you come to do avodah. Why is it placed in here, literally in the middle of nowhere? That a Kohen, when he's coming to do the avodah, should not be intoxicated to the extent that he will forget what he's doing, and he will come and have improper thoughts, and that will cause him to die because he has profaned the avodah of the Beit HaMikdash. But why is it here? So what? What does it have to do with it being here? Ramban adds 3 words: kasher, asu, bana. Just like, who's Hashem talking to? He's talking to Aaron, just like your sons just did. What did your sons just do? They had a little bit too much to drink before they came on duty, and that's why they made this big mistake. And instead of helping you out, they tried to do something and got themselves. Okay, so that's exactly. Raman says the reason it's here is to teach us that what did Nadav and Avihu do wrong? They had a little too much to drink. Now we would say, but wait a minute, they hadn't been warned; they didn't know that. But it's fairly obvious. It seems to me that the Gemara, the Medrash and Mikra Rabbah says that we see from this juxtaposition in this pasuk that Nadav and Avihu had too much to drink, or had a drink before they got in. Lomar because of their level of intoxication, they made a mistake and brought this fire, this strange fire. Not that they were punished for drinking wine because they hadn't yadayon lo yuzharu mimenu. Ramban wants us to understand that even though the Torah is here telling us by this juxtaposition that Nadav and Avihu did have something to drink before they went in, which was inappropriate, they can't be punished for that because they hadn't been given that halacha yet. That halacha hadn't been taught to them yet. It's only afterwards that they're taught that halacha. What he's saying is that the level of intoxication caused them to do something wrong, be'esh Hashem, that caused them to get killed. That it wasn't that they were drunk, it was that because they were drunk, they did something wrong. So in other words, the chet wasn't that they were drunk, the chet that was because of their drunkenness, they did something wrong. Ramban wants that to be very clear, that it's not a punishment for drinking. Why? Because that hadn't been given yet. The halacha hadn't been given yet. You can't punish somebody for halacha that you haven't given them yet. So we're very simple. That's what Ramban says, that the wine caused them to make the mistake. And then Ramban again quotes pretty similar again what Rashi said. This applies when you come into the Ohel Moed. Never can be at all. Never kiddush time. Ohel. All needs to get back be at all. Afkan asa gishat mizbeach. Binat all lashon Rashi v'torat kohanim. He basically quotes the same midrash in terms of extending this halacha from inside Ohel Moed to outside Ohel Moed to the courtyard where the mizbeach is. If you are coming to do avodah on the mizbeach. The anira l'fi ha'hekdesh. Now, that's where Rashi ended. Rashi ended by saying, here's how we learn it out, period. Ramban wants to go further and say, okay, so what? Why didn't the Torah specifically say it, or why do we want to learn it out from these two juxtapositions? She'ein ha'kohen chayav misa b'gisha ha'mizbeach v'lo b'viyat ha'oel ella im kain avad shama avodah. In other words, walking into the Beit HaMikdash when the Kohen has had a drink, but not being on duty, if he's not doing any avodah, not a problem. I mean, it's a problem that maybe it's a problem that he might do something else wrong, but as long as he understands he's not allowed to do any avodah, it's not that big a deal. He's saying that the problem is if while he is intoxicated or while he hasn't washed his hands and feet properly, he wants to try to do an avodah, that's where he gets into trouble. Because he's the equivalent when a Kohen is drunk or he hasn't properly washed his hands and feet before doing avodah, it's the equivalent of a non-Kohen doing the avodah. It's basically what Rambam is saying here. Kederach kiddush yadayim she'ein hazara sham ela shelo ya'avod. It says only that he's allowed to come into the Beit HaMikdash and not wash his hands, but he's not allowed to do any avodah before he washes his hands and feet. So too, because we learn the same, we compare the two, same thing applies to drinking wine. It's not that you can't come into the Beit HaMikdash. It's that you cannot do an avodah in the Beit HaMikdash when you had wine. When they come to the mizbeach to lishareit, to be part of the service, then it's when you can't. You have to wash your hands, and by extension, you have to not drink wine. So Ramban is teaching us a couple of things here, in addition to the historical rationale for why none of the Navi were killed, even though this halacha hadn't necessarily been given, but also to say that there's an extra thing we learned, that coming into the Beit HaMikdash in and of itself drunk is not an issue. It's if you come into the Beit HaMikdash while drunk as a Kohen and want to do avodah, that's the problem. As we just said, the only time this is a problem is when you are doing avodah. Afkan, so too the same thing. Eino chayav ela b'shat avodah. Kilomar, to tell us the eino chayav ela shel yavod. Beit shenichnas shikur o sheshata sham v'yavad. Now there are two ways you could do that. You could have walked in having already had your drink and be shikur when you walk in, or you could have walked in perfectly okay, ready to work. And somebody said, hey, let's drink a l'chaim, and you have a little bit too much to drink. Now you have to not do any more work once you've had that drink. Therefore, it says, kukat olam, the rabbot, this kukat olam, because if I read the psukim only, it would say only if I came to the mizbeach or I came to bring something either to do something inside Olam Moed. What about hayitzikot, all the other auxiliary jobs, pouring the oil into the mixture to make the mincha, belilot, mixing up the flour and the oil, tenufot, if there are certain korbanot that require the Kohen and the giver to bring portions of the korban to raise it and wave it, hagashot, bringing the mincha to the mizbeach, mitzot, taking the portion of the mincha, all of these things, vatarot, amlikot, v'hazayot, all of these things are not work that you're doing on the mizbeach. They're not work you're doing inside the inner sanctuary. These are all parts of things you're doing to prepare to bring something on the mizbeach. How do I know that those are also included in things a Kohen cannot do if he's had too much to drink? They are included by the words that says fukat olam, not kok olam, but fukat olam. It covers all of the things that only a Kohen can do from the time the korban is brought. Once it says to bring the korban to Hashem, these things are all included in bringing a korban. All of these different preparatory activities, whether it's cutting up the korban or it's again all these preparations for the mincha, shechting the bird that's in a special way of malika. All of these things are part and parcel of things that are required for a kohen to do. Therefore, a kohen cannot do them when drunk. However, this only applies in the Mishkan or in the Beit HaMikdash. If you are bringing a korban outside of those at a time when it's permitted, which was a very limited period of time, when they first got to Eretz Yisrael, they were allowed to use bamot, and then the period between the destruction of Shiloh and the building of the Beit HaMikdash, where bamot were permitted. This only applies to either the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash. How do I know that it includes also when the Mishkan was established at Shiloh and Beit HaMikdash? Talmud Lomer Chukat Olam Ki Azhara LaKohanim Bi'avodatam. This whole thing of not being drunk applies to a Kohen when they are on duty doing their Kohanic duties. The Ein Kohen B'Bama. We know that at a Bama, at a private altar, when you brought a Korban to Hashem, you didn't need a Kohen. There was no service, nothing that required a Kohen. It was a completely different way of bringing a Korban to Hashem, which, again, because of the limited historical time frame in which it was practiced, we don't have a whole lot of halachot, but one of the halachot is that you don't require a Kohen. Ramah wants to know that when it comes, when you are coming, kasher tavdu avodah, doesn't mean when you enter, it means when you are doing the avodah. Why if that's the case, why does it say b'voachem? Why does it say kasher tavod b'yom moed? Why is it b'voachem b'yom moed? Ki kol havodot shamayu, because that's the place where all the avodah was done. Oh, b'toch ha'oel, oh mizbech holash petach moed, either in the Ohel Moed or at the entrance to the Ohel Moed on the mizbech that olot were brought on the korbanot were brought on. V'klal. And the general principle is, where was I? I lost my place here. Okay, wait a minute. As he said, as he's emphasized, the warning against drinking and the punishment, therefore, is only if they come to work. They should not do any work when they've had to drink. Whereas I said, or if they haven't washed their hands and feet properly, or similarly, a kohen who's not wearing all of the proper begadim also cannot do avodah. All three of these things, missing the right garments, not having washed hands and feet, and drinking wine, are all the same in that they apply only during the avodah, not when you're just coming in. Okay, not if you're just coming to the Beit HaMikdash to say hello to one of the other Kohanim who's on duty or whatever you're coming for. It's only when you're working. Okay, we're going to. Okay. No, okay, let's finish this. Okay, that we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi says, there are 5 different things, where the area where the Mizbeach is equal to the inner courtyard, inner building. A Kohen who has a blemish that keeps him from serving as a Kohen. Upurei Rosh, if he hasn't had his proper haircut. Somebody who hasn't properly washed hands also cannot enter them. All these are listed in different places. Malot the Rabbanan, they are all rabbinic enactments that are based on different psukim, but not necessarily so. But Adar of Moshe, however, Rambam does not necessarily agree with Ramban's theory. He says that entering the Beit HaMikdash without being properly prepared, even if you're not doing avodah, is a negative commandment. In other words, entering the Beit HaMikdash without washing your hands or without with having had something to drink is a negative commandment, but it's not a negative commandment that carries the death penalty. That's the only difference according to Rambam. Ramban says, no, it's not even a negative command. Okay. Chizkuni says the following, and again, we're going to see a very similar stretch of going similarly in terms of what does yayin v'shechar mean? Is shechar meant the way Rashi takes it as a verb, or the way Rambam takes it as as meaning something to drink. He first Chizkuni quotes Rashi, Derech Shichrut, Kilomar, as if to say, shiur Kedei Shichrut. You have to first, it's not just one drop of wine or a little shot cup of wine. Got to have enough wine that makes you shikr, which Kediza B'Sefet Kritut, Parak Amrlo, or Lazar Yain Shechar Al Teshlo, Shishtu Kederech Shichruto, that you can't drink enough wine to make you inebriated. Ha'im hivsik bo, oh shenatan l'tochel mayim kol shupater. In other words, if, as Rambam said, if he didn't drink the whole time in one shot, he waited a period of time between sips or between drinking halves of the cup, then he won't get drunk, or if he watered it down, then he also won't get drunk. Now, why does it say Al taste you shouldn't drink? Why are Aaron and his sons told not to drink any wine? Because I might think normally normally we do give wine or drinks to anybody else who is in avelut, and we see that from a pasuk in Mishlei, to new shechar la'oved, give shechar to somebody who is lost, the yain lamari nefesh, and yain to somebody whose soul is bitter, i.e., referring to somebody who has lost a close relative. However, even though normally we do use wine as something to help somebody get over their loss, you and your sons are not allowed to. Hashem tells Aaron, you are not allowed, because of the fact that you are just in the process of being anointed as Kohanim, you are not allowed to carry out any of the laws of Avelut. And another reason, so that's one. Firstly, even after you leave the Beit HaMikdash, you can't drink because you're not allowed to, because you have been anointed, you're not allowed to have any of the laws of Avelut. You're equivalent to a Kohen Gadol in this respect for this halacha. The chatem asurim bo, you're prohibited at the time you're on duty. The yesh bochiv mita beit bachem elo hamoed yein derech liot shikur oved. It is not appropriate for somebody who is intoxicated to serve Hashem, to work in the Beit HaMikdash. So Chizkuni is basically splitting this into two separate halachot here. One is the law to be given to Aaron and his sons immediately, that even though you theoretically are avelim, you're not allowed to drink to get over, to help you get through the avelut period. That's number one. But number two is that ultimately, even afterwards, when you are going on duty and you're performing avodah, you're not allowed to be intoxicated, because that's not covered for Hashem, that you should be intoxicated and doing the avodah. And we're going to see that throughout the parshanim here. Dat Zikanim. Yain Yishechar al Tesh. Why? Again, Dat Zikanim wants to give us a rationale. Why shouldn't I be allowed to drink? What's one drink? Nothing. Lefish al Yidei Shtiyot. By drinking, Yoter Midai. One good drink leads to another good drink. Another good drink leads to another good drink. So by drinking too much, what does that lead to? Boshot v'cherpot ba'olav. Embarrassment, degradation can cause you. Getting drunk, losing the sight of where you are, what you're all about, can cause one to lead to an embarrassing situation, a degrading situation. The Gama Kadosh Baruch Hu Savach, and also Kadosh Baruch Hu calls out who is degraded, to those that spend all their time drinking wine. Similarly, it says another pasuk, Al Tere Yayin Ki Adam. You should be fair of full of wine, because it can cause redness. Perish, what does that mean? Al Tachmod Yayin, don't desire wine, Ki Acharito Dam, because over drinking leads to bloodshed, because it leads to quarreling, because inhibitions go down, we get angrier easier, we lose our cool, and this can lead to arguments, warfare, bloodshed. Not a good place to be. The Od Ketiv, and he has other psukim, Kitain because Eino, Bekis Kisiv, Kolomar Shichur, Notain Eino Bekos, Bamochro Notain Eino Bekis. That the person who is drunk looks to get more wine, and the person who's selling wine looks to enrich himself by taking more money from this guy. You should instead walk among the upright. Kolomar L'sof. In the end, what will happen? He wants to translate not Meisharim as upright, but Mesharim as walking among the flat areas, the areas of the plain. Why? What does that mean? Because somebody who becomes so drunk that all they want to do is drink more, and they want to go buy more, and they're going to run out of stuff. They're going to go home. They're going to pick up whatever they have. They're going to bring it to the wine merchant, sell it, pawn it, whatever they have to do to get more wine. Sound familiar? Like same thing with a drug addict. Okay, you're addicted to drug. What do? You have no more money. You start going through your house, picking anything that you can sell and selling it so you can get your next fix. Okay, so therefore you'll be walking in your house like it's a plain, like it's an open area. Why? Because you've sold all your furniture. In other words, you've already sold all your possessions, so you now have an empty house to walk in. So he's saying he's walking in a flat, empty area because he sold all of his possessions to buy wine. And in the end, he will bite like a snake, just like the earth was cursed because of the Nachash. So too, so too Cham was cursed through the wine that Noach drank. His aftermath will be like somebody whose snake is bitten. That through the wine that Adam drank, he became intoxicated, and therefore he quotes a midrash that the reason Adam was willing to eat from the tree was because he was a little tipsy. Beforehand, he had already had some wine to drink. He was a little tipsy, so that's why he was willing to eat from the tree, and ultimately that leads to other problems. The minhag before you drink of saying savrim or anan, please let me know if this drink is too strong. No, it's okay. It should bring you life rather than death, because it was through wine, according to this midrash, the Tosfos is quoting, that death descended to the world because Adam had wine to drink. Therefore, he listened to the Nachash, or he listened to Chava and ate from the tree and caused all of the world's problems. Hey, Matina, when we find this Gemara in Vamaisha. Okay. Okay, we'll skip the next page. Okay, because there's a block here that I wanted to skip anyway. Okay. Below out, it's not enough that when you drink, you can lose sight of what's going on. It can cause you to worship false gods. You should not have any other false god. And how do we know that drinking leads to avodah zarah? Because the pasuk by the Egel says, the people sat down to eat and drink, and then they got up and made the Egel Hazahav to worship the Egel. And you see from here that that drinking, getting overly drunk, leads to many problems, 4 major problems. What do they have? All 4 of these things, all 4 of these terrible chataim are caused by drinking too much wine. I'm sorry. Don't be those who overly imbibe in wine. Shlomo says in Mishlei, Keven sorer umora shenag asher nerag alayayin, like the ben sorer umora, who is executed because he drank too much wine and he gluttonously ate too much meat. The Od Amru. And however, now we go the other way. Wine can have a good side. I just told you all the bad sides about wine. Toast says, now wait a minute. There are some positive impacts of wine too. Not to worry. Perak Adar. Amrav Tiyavar Ashi Amrav. Kol Shedato B'Yushevet Alav B'Yena. Person who drinks appropriately and doesn't get overly and doesn't get intoxicated, which he drinks and the wine causes him to be at ease, at peace with himself. Yesh bo midat shivim zikanim. It's as if he learned his knowledge from the 70 elders. Why 70 elders? Shkein yayin natan b'shivim, because the gematria of yayin is 70. The Amar Rav Chanina said, Kol mitaba b'yeno. Anybody who again drinks his wine appropriately, perish afal pisha shotahu mitzvata li'olam. Even though he drinks a little bit, he still is at peace with the world. Yesh bo midat kono. He has given nachas to Hashem. Shenemar, it says, Vayorach Hashem et reach hanichoach, v'reach kishtiyah, that Hashem smelled the reach nichoach of the karbanot, and reach is like shtiyah. I don't know how reach gets to be like shtiyah, but that's what Tosfos says. It's like similar to drinking. So that when you drink a little bit, it gives a good fragrance. If you drink too much, it doesn't give a good fragrance. Yodam Razal, and similarly, we have another Mamar Chazal that says Yayin Natan B'Shivim, Yayin equals 70, Sod Natan B'Shivim. Secret, hidden things are also Shivim. Sod is also Shivim in Gematria. Nichnas Yayin, when wine comes in, Yatza Sod, the secrets come out. So you have to be very careful when you're drinking to make sure that you don't overdo it. Also, the Yayin caused the Aseret HaShvatim to be exiled by Syria. Similarly, gives more cases of wine, of abstention from wine is good, and drinking is not good. Okay, now V'od Amar Razal. Now we get to this thing. Now remember, we said there were two other psukim at the end. Ulaharot et bnei Yisrael, ulavdil ben hakodesh ben hachol, ularot et bnei Yisrael. So Adar Razal, shiur, somebody who's had too much to drink, al yoreh, cannot teach. Shenemar yayin shecher al teish, the samichle, and the next pasuk is ularot et bnei Yisrael, and to teach bnei Yisrael. Feinit Rabbi Reuven. Okay. Ve'od yayin nikra v'loshen rami chamar, lomar shenichnas b'ramach evarim. That wine enters all 248 limbs of our body because it's called chamar, which also is 248 in Aramaic. Okay, and then finally he ends with this: you shouldn't be like other avelim who drink wine to help them get through this period. As Rabbi Yochanan said, "Lo nivra yayin ela lenachem avelim." Yochanan ends with yayin was only created to help avelim get over their loss, or ulishalim sachar l'rishaim, and to give reward to the wicked, so they can enjoy life here a little bit, but before they get punished in Olam Haba. Okay. Klei Yakar starts very similarly. The reason this is placed here, as we just quoted the Gemara. The Achshov Aharon, and Aaron might have thought, Shebe'evlo, because he was forbidden from engaging in anything else related to mourning, Lefachot Mutalo Ishtot Yayin. He would have at least thought, at least I can drink wine to help me get over this loss. I can't do anything else. I'm not allowed to rip my garments. I'm not allowed to grow my hair. I'm not allowed to do any other visible signs of the fact that I'm in a velut. So at least I should be able to have a drink to help me get over it. Al kain his hero kan shafilu be'evlo asur lo lishtot derech shifrut. Unlike Ramban, who said that the reason this parsha is here is to show us that it was the drinking wine that caused the death of Nadav and Avihu, Klei Yakar says no. The reason this parsha is here is that Aaron should understand that even though you're an Avel and normally Avel is allowed to drink wine, you are not allowed to drink wine. But Rashi Pirish, and Rashi explains out Vayidam Aaron was silent. He accepted the death without complaining to God. Shekibos Aral Shikato, that he got a reward for his silence. That was what was the reward? Yachid lo levado dibur zeh. That Hashem gave this mitzvah. It's one of the Taryag mitzvot. Even though we say Torah tziva lanu Moshe, this mitzvah is given through a dibur of Hashem to Aharon. Ramaz kan shenikra shikor kol she'eno yachal ledaber b'ftei hamelach. This is to hint to us. How can you tell whether somebody is shikar or not if they're not sober enough to be able to go and have a conversation with the king or any other person of authority? Okay, therefore Hashem speaks to him directly, lahorot lo, to teach him, that the degree of intoxication that prohibits you from doing any of these things that we've talked about is if you are not as sharp enough to be able to talk to a king, to go and present yourself in front of the king and talk on behalf of whatever you have to talk on. That Eliyeh kol zaman miyushav b'dato ad yuchal hashiv. You always have to be composed. Your composure has to remain with you so you can respond properly. Zesh Amar, that's why it says Vaydar Hashem al Aaron Lamor b'milat Lamor chatam lo. Aaron, you have to be able to talk. Kol inyan lomar l'chash muchan tamid lemor ulashiv lemelech baruch hu. You have to be sober enough that you can respond and have a conversation with the king, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because of the merit of accepting Hashem's decree, what happened to his sons without going through any retaliation response, in the merit of that, he is the one who was given this mitzvah. This is to hint to us, when wine enters, all your secrets come out because you no longer have any inhibitions and you'll reveal everything. Lefikach, therefore, nit yached elav hadibur kemelach hamegala la'avda. So Hashem spoke directly to him like a king who is revealing a secret to his servant. He talked to him privately. The king doesn't want anybody else to find out. Therefore, the only way a person can enter into Hashem's secrets, to learn Hashem's secrets, is by not drinking wine. Once wine enters, all the secrets go out, and you can no longer focus and concentrate enough to learn them. Therefore, Hashem speaks to Aaron directly, not even through Moshe. Speaks directly to Aaron to reveal to him this secret, so that he should not reveal any secrets. So again, Hashem speaks directly to Aaron to teach him this lesson. Okay, we'll skip this one and we'll go to the next one here. Adar acher. Okay, very interestingly, he says, this warning of drinking has a hint to silence. We always talk about the importance of not speaking, overly speaking. He calls shikor marbed devarim. Person who becomes drunk, no longer has any inhibitions, he starts talking about everything and just talking and talking and talking. Who goes and talks too much? Those who have had too much to drink. Al kain bischut vayidom Aharon, in the merit of Aaron's silence, nityached elav dibur zeh. Hashem again appears to him directly and speaks to him only privately this mitzvah of not drinking wine. He al yado lo yarbe b'sicha b'tela, because through not overindulging in wine, a person will not overindulge in idle conversation, omizikat, omazeket, or he will not find any damaging conversations. Ki lashon hara tulata katil. You know that lashon hara kills 3 people, hurts 3 people: the person who's saying it, the person who's listening, the person who it's about. Kach nemar v'lo tamutu v'vad masha shichot meimi b'teva. Aside from the damage that inebriation causes just in the normal course of its activities, it also causes achrito darchei mavet yesh derach yashar sofei tevot shechar adei shechar kol be'einav lemishar. Everything becomes open. Rosh Amru Chazal. So we have all of these things that wine causes all of these negative things, yet improper and appropriately used can lead us to Kedusha. And that's why, interesting enough, I'm not going to bring it to because my time is running out here. But we have, in the end, he says, that when do we use wine properly? When we use it to bring in a chag, when we use it on the Mizbeach, it can be used properly when it's poured and given to Hashem as a gift. And that's why the pasuk says, that we separate. No, when can you drink? When you're making kiddush and you're making havdalah. When we sanctify the yom through kiddush over wine, when it enters and when it leaves by havdalah, that is the proper and appropriate use of wine, and that's why we should not use wine inappropriately. You should drink only in moderation so that you will be properly able to distinguish between what is proper and what is not. A that you will be able to properly teach and not misguide people in your teaching because you've had too much to drink. So from here we learn also the halacha that one is not allowed to render a halachic decision if he's drunk. When he's not also not allowed to testify when he is drunk. There are all sorts of corollary laws that are learned from this short parak here of Hashem telling Aaron and his sons that they're not to drink when they come into the Beit HaMikdash by the addition of those two psukim afterwards of Ula Havdil and Ula Horod. So I hope that we will understand, as I said, I don't have to go back through history of all the times where wine has caused major problems or other intoxicating beverages gets you into trouble. All you have to do is Google drunk driving, drunk activities, how many fights there are that have broken out outside of bars when people have had too much to drink and end up in somebody getting shot or otherwise badly hurt, etc. We understand that wine, Hashem created wine. There's a purpose for wine. It has a positive purpose. It also can be misused or abused. And therefore, just like everything else that Kadosh Baruch Hu has created, we have to find the ways to use it properly so that we can take wine and elevate it. And through elevating it, we elevate ourselves as opposed to taking wine to degrade ourselves and degrade creation through our abuse or misuse of wine. So I hope and pray that we should all get that lesson, that we, especially as Pesach is coming, we're going to be drinking lots of wine at the Seder. Make sure that you're drinking appropriately, whatever day it is, whether it's Purim, whether it's Simchas Torah, whether it's Pesach, that when you're drinking, that you're drinking appropriately so that we continue to act appropriately. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send us the brachot of wine and we can be zocha to a Chag Sameach and ultimately, we are approaching the month of Nisan, the month of Geulah, that Hashem should send us the Geulah Shlema B'mheira of Yameinu. Thank you all. Comments, questions, or feedback at this point? Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I'm going to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov, because Rosh Chodesh is rapidly approaching us. The probability at this week, just